Hello, this is Dread from Last Epic Builds. In today's video topic, it's going to be about a Lightning Blast Sorcerer. So I set out to do on a mission to make a Lightning Blast Sorcerer that did not rely on Elemental Nova for clear, where you just play Lightning Blast in itself and try to rely upon it for area of effect and for clear. And so far, it is pretty much successful. This is, if you did not know, this is based off of Wast3d's guide on the forums. He recently made one and inspired me to make a build guide on this as well, because I was thinking like maybe I could try it as well, so I did. And so far, it's been performing well. Now, if you're watching the video right now, you'll notice that the damage numbers are a little low. Well, it's one of those kind of builds that like the damage numbers seem low, but like the effect, like it's more about feel than damage right now with this build, because we have about like 130% to 150% cast speed. It depends how tuned of gear you have. So you're casting way faster than normal builds do, if that makes sense. And when you're casting that fast, the double cast and the quadruple cast of the Lightning Blast procs way more often than you'd think it would. And since you're hitting the entire pack at once with Lightning Blast, thanks to the chain and the forks, it kind of makes it so that, like, sure, you're only hitting for so much, but you're hitting the entire pack every right click. So as you keep spamming the right click, they'll eventually die. And another thing as well is I believe after the changes to resistances as well, the stun formula was not changed, so shock is absolutely insane right now in terms of stunning. I don't know why. I got to wave 170 in arena with like a shitty amount of gear, right, on my sorcerer, like level 70, just by shock and stun alone because of how much stun I had with the build. Now, is that going to be a thing in the future? Probably not. They'll probably fix the stun formula. But as of right now, yeah, stun's insane with shock. Shock's mainly insane, right? That's mainly what's doing it. But yeah, the damage isn't going to be amazing with this build, but it definitely is good enough to farm monoliths, and it's good enough to push arenas. So that's all that matters in the end, right? You don't necessarily need all the damage in the world sometimes. I will say though, you could do a lot of things to make the build a lot better. This is like kind of like in an SSF environment. I'm trying to play a build that is a lot more focused on like end game gearing, because the idols you can use with this build are insane. Like you could get like double damage idols and have like 180% increased damage on each idol. You can get pretty insane idols with this build. So it's more of an investment kind of thing. The Ellie Nova build's the same way, where it feels really crappy in the beginning, but once you start getting some investment, it feels insane. But other than that, the build has been feeling amazing. Like I got to maps pretty quickly with Glacier, obviously. And then as soon as I swapped over to LB, I did fine. The biggest issue I will say though is the fact of getting up to 76 so you can use the Divine Scepter, because that's when the build starts popping off, because you want your mana cost to be low, as you can tell in the video. Pretty much when I'm not utilizing Arcane Ascendance, I can pretty much infinitely cast my Lightning Bolt without too many issues. I only have to focus every so often, but when I do pop my Arcane Ascendance, and that'll be your main single target source, you can kind of like burst down bosses, because it gives you a lot of increased damage, gives you extra casts of Lightning Blast, and gives you a lot of cast speed as well, allowing you to kind of like just go ham on the Lightning Blast. It does raise up the mana a little bit, so that is the whole reason why we run Focus in this build. Otherwise, you wouldn't necessarily need to run Focus, but that's the main reason we run Focus. Now, other than that, let's get into the skills, shall we? Here we are in game with Why Not Nova Monka S, because obviously, why aren't we just playing Nova like normal people, right? But some people just like Lightning Blast, and it's kind of like Arc from PoE as well, so it's kind of fun. Let's get into skills, shall we? So we have Lightning Blast here. This is the most important part. So we take 2 points into Storm Razor for some base critical strike chance, which is very strong later on. so that we can move into chain lightning. So you get additional chains, and it does increase the mana cost to 6 because the base is 3, but we get the -3 mana cost on weapon. So then we go up to 6. We take one node here, Divergent, so that our Lightning Blast can fork. This allows us to pretty much have as much AoE clear as possible. And of course, we take 1 point into Lightning Attunement so that we can proc Lightning Aegis on us, so that we can get increased damage, and we can also take 25% less damage. And it's also very important for our idols as well, as you'll see later on. Then we take 4 points into Overcharge, so you get some more crit multi, and it gets the double cast chance. It's very strong here, as you can kind of like, it pretty much scales with your cast speed, as the faster you cast, the more double cast you'll get, which will mean the more damage you deal, right? Then of course we have a point into Hypercharge, so that about 25% chance of the time when we double cast, we also quadruple cast, which means about 6% of the time we quadruple cast, which is pretty much a 6% chance to quadruple our damage, which is very strong if you've ever played PoE and ever played around with triple damage mods. And now we have 4 points into Arcane Power, so we get additional change each time we cast. Recently, well, we have a lot of cast speed, so this is usually up 100% of the time. Then we take 2 points travel into Crackling Speed with sort of some cast speed. Then 3 points into Shatter Shock. This is where all of your damage comes from, is from shocking and chilling the enemy. That's why you'll see your damage hit for like 200, and then right after hit for like 2000. Shatter Shock is absolutely insane for the build. Lightning Blast would not work without this node, in my opinion, because you would nowhere near enough damage to make it work. And that's it for Lightning Blast. The next most important skill is we have Arcane Ascendance. So the main reason we're utilizing Arcane Ascendance is because since we have no way of getting single target, this allows us to kind of be in the place of our single target skill. So the main thing it does is it gives you 100% increased spell damage and 50% increased cast speed. The cast speed's absolutely amazing for us because, like I said, the more we cast, the more double casts we get and the more damage we get. So the damage is a little inconsistent sometimes, but it's definitely worth it. 3 points into Power Sprint so that we get haste after using it. And of course we take 1 point into Acuity, so that we no longer drain our mana, but only affects 4 spells. But then of course we take 3 points into Cunning, so that we can cast 16 spells with increased cast speed and increased mana cost as well. It also increases the damage they do as well, as with this node here, 4 out of 5 higher planes, so we get 60% increased spell damage. So we're getting 160% increased spell damage with our Lightning Blast while we're trying to kill single target. Absolutely insane. 1 point into Superconductor so that we can automatically cast Lightning Bolt if we've hit something nearby us, which is very strong because it does have a 2-second cooldown, but we get some frequency from Closed Circuit so that we can cast it more often off of Arcane Ascendance, and it's pretty much just doubling our damage. We take 2 points into Slow Breathing, and then for travel, then 3 points into Tranquility. So we're making it so that we do not regenerate mana while in Arcane Ascendance mode, but it does reduce the mana of our Lightning Blast. So as a quick example here, how we utilize Arcane Ascendance. So it is an 8-second cooldown. We are at 6 mana, and then this brings it to 7 mana, so that we're actually not really changing the mana cost, but we cannot, obviously we cannot gain mana while in it, but that's why we have Focus. Normally, when you're just running around casting Lightning Blast, your mana isn't that bad, but it's when you're in Arcane Ascendance, you'll suck up your mana for a lot more single target. So that's why we have Focus. So let's get into the next skill, shall we? And then we have Focus. The main purpose of Focus is so that we gain mana while we're kind of like after an Arcane Ascendance burst, or when we're actually out of mana for some reason because we've been teleporting a lot, because teleport does cost a lot of mana thanks to the fact that we're not intelligence stacking. But the main way we utilize Focus here is to gain mana back after Arcane Ascendance. So we're going for the burst functionality, so we get a lot more mana from the burst, right? Getting a lot more mana. We get haste after channeling as well. 4 points into mana flooded, so we get increased mana regen while channeling so that it's faster. 1 point into desperate mediation, where we get increased mana regen per missing mana. Very strong. 3 points. The rest of the points on the tree really don't matter. They don't really do anything. As long as you keep the burst functionality of focus, it'll be fine. And the way I use focus is mainly when you're kind of like running around, you don't like cast it enough to the point where you'll need to use focus very often, except for in arena. But after an Arcane Ascendance burst, meaning on single target, right, we will kind of go down on mana. So we will have to hold it, get the burst, and then you stop, and then you have plenty of mana. That's the beautiful thing about this version of the build, is the fact that we don't necessarily need to hold focus the entire time. We just need to hold it long enough to get the burst, and then we're good to go. Very, very strong. Let's talk about the next skill. We have teleport here. It's pretty familiar to the Flame Reave build tree, because we're just going for the stat version where we go for fire res, lightning res, and cold res, right? Then we double the duration of that, and we also get the increased elemental damage. That's pretty much how we're capping our elemental res here, is through that and through stuff on the tree. Our reses are a little kind of messed up, but if you wear like 1 gold ring, it will completely fix it for you. And we pretty much just use it to cap our reses. We just need to teleport every like 8 seconds to keep it up, so that we're always capped on res, which is very strong for us. And let's get into the next skill, shall we? Here we are with Flame Ward. I have the stereotypical defensive setup. So we take 2 points here into Stalwart Defense for Ward, 1 point into Desperate Defense for Travel, 1 point to Astonish so that it casts when I get stunned, because I have Boomer API, like APM, so it's very nice to have it on a cast when damage taken link, right? Here from PoE. 2 points from Fuel the Flames, 1 point into Dual Aegis, so we have 2 charges so that we can, obviously survive. Eventually on gear, you'll want an extra charge. I just was not lucky enough to get a chest like that. 5 points into less hit damage so that we take even less damage. So it's about like 70% less damage. I don't know exactly how to do the math on that. 3 points into Prismatic Buffer so that we take even less elemental damage. This is very strong when having to deal with Fireball packs, as right now they're pretty disgusting because they deal a lot of damage. Then 3 points into Duration and Mana Efficiency, and then more points into Mana Efficiency, because since we are not running Intelligence stacking, which will give us, Mana Efficiency, our Flame Ward actually costs a lot, ironically. It's kind of funny. And that's pretty much it for the skills here. We're going to move on to the passives. Alright, here we are with the passives here. We take 8 points into Scholar, because we're trying to get our mana all the way up to 300 so that we start taking advantage of the lightning damage idols, as that's a lot of damage we're missing still. 2 points into Elementalist, 5 points into Mage Flurry for cast speed so that we cast faster, 5 points into Knowledge of Destruction for more crit multi and crit chance. And of course we go over to Sorcerer here. We are Sorcerer, so we can deal extra damage equal to our mana cost, doesn't matter. But the flat mana is very strong, means that we can almost cap our mana to 300 without having to run an Orion's Eye, which is the plan. So we're taking 8 points into Calculated Destruction for more spell critical strike chance, so we're always critting. 5 points into Arcane Momentum for even more cast speed, very strong for us. 2 points into Chronomancer. 5 points into Whirling Snow so that we have a 35% chill chance that combines with the chill chance on our weapon to make it so we're almost always chilling for Shatter Shock, so we always get that damage. 5 points into Rift Bolt for Lightning Pen and lightning damage. This is pretty much all the sustain you need with potions and Flame Ward. Don't really need more than this. 8 points into Crackling Precision, which gets doubled for lightning skills because we are utilizing a lightning skill. And then 5 points into Arcane Obliteration, so you have even more critical strike multiplier, very strong. 5 points into Spellslinger. Both these mods are very strong for us. The adaptive damage is very strong for us because we're not running a staff, so we kind of have to make the adaptive damage somewhat else, right? Because we're running a catalyst for crit chance. And then the cast speed's insane for us, obviously, because, the double cast, right? And of course, we take 8 points into Elemental Ascendance so that we get increased elemental damage. We also get the Elemental Res so that we're almost capping our Ele Res with just Teleport and our passive tree, so you don't have to waste points for set affixes, because if you did not know, Fire Shield is leaving us in the next patch, so we no longer will have the free Elemental Res from it. And of course, 5 points into Arcane Current, so you get increased shock effect. It also increases stun duration, which is kind of cool as well, because that actually matters for this build for some reason, because stun is actually working really well right now. I do not know why. I'm hoping that they fix it, because it seems pretty insane. And of course, 5 points into Archmage so that we get 15 adaptive spell damage as well. Now we are level 77. We have 23 points to use after this. There's a lot of things on the tree you could go for, but the main thing I would suggest going for is to stack mana with these 2 points, with Mana Shell and Wisdom, as with both these points we'll get about, it's about like 70, I think it's about, yeah, it's about 60 mana. And then, of course, with some mana on gear as well, we'll be able to get to the 300 damage threshold for our lightning damage idols, right? Which will be very strong for us, which will double the lightning damage we gain from those and even more damage. And of course, the more lightning damage, the more mana we have, right? The easier it will be to burst down enemies and not have to focus all the time, which will mean more uptime on our damage, right? Because the less time we're focusing is more time we're killing enemies, and more time we're killing enemies is less time we're dying. So having more max mana is pretty strong with a build like this with so little consumption, right? And of course, obviously having to keep up teleport as well is a little annoying while you're trying to utilize Lightning Blast, but other than that, it's fine. And other points I could think about getting other than mana, if you manage to like run an Orion's Eye or something, which is obviously a very strong option. If you want to just want to run an Orion's Eye instead to cap your mana, you could go for, I believe mainly you want to go for Knowledge of Destruction, and then probably some increased damage somewhere around here. Not exactly sure what else I would grab. We are taking 6 points also as well in Spellblade for the increased elemental res, obviously, so that we get to cap. So that if we just wear 1 golden ring, we'll be at capped Ele res, and it's absolutely beautiful. That being said, that'll be the masteries. Let's get into the gearing, shall we? Now we have the gearing here. So for idols, the main idol you want an idol with the increased lightning damage doubled if you have 300 max mana, and then with the prefix you want increased lightning damage while you have lightning aegis. That's the whole point why we have lightning aegis on our cast, is so that it's a 5% chance, but while you're like doing monoliths, it'll always be up. Right, it's a 10-second duration, so you deal even more increased damage. You kind of want both of those so that you have a lot of damage. That's all you want with this build, is damage. You don't really need anything else other than dodge. But yeah, for idols, that's where you go for. Then for our amulet, we're going with dodge percentage and crit strike multi. We're going for the brass amulet base for even more cast speed, because cast speed is multiplicative with us because we're double casting every like 4th cast pretty much, and then quadruple casting. So the more we cast, the more damage we get. It's a little inconsistent thanks to the fact that 6% chance is pretty low, but it will deal a lot of damage in the end when your Arcane Ascendance popping off, right? You're going crazy. Like once you pop off with Arcane Ascendance, like you pretty go crazy, right? The cast speed is insane. And of course, for a helmet, just lightning critical strike multiplier. That's the main thing in resistance. For our chest, you'd want a flame ward charge on top of this, and instead of vitality, you'd probably want dexterity. But vitality works too. Either way works. The main thing you want is the dodge, because you want to be able to dodge things so you don't die. For our weapon, this is pretty much exactly what you'd be wanting to run as a weapon. I don't know what else you could run. You could probably run something with like probably the lightning damage and lightning leech, like the flat lightning damage. That could be an option as well, but something like this, obviously. For our weapon, our catalyst, something like this: crit multi, crit chance, resistance. Try to get a 6%. I only got a 5%, but I'm an SSF, so I don't care. This is pretty good offhand. That's the main reason why we're going with a one-hander and offhand, is so that we can utilize the base crit here. For our rings, just resistance and dodge. Resistance and dodge. Our belt, we're using dodge and dodge belt and more dodge. Cast speed on our, obviously on our gloves, and resistance and mana. For our boots, this is very important. So you really want a pair of Stormtide boots. This completely changes the build. Having that chance to shock and that shock effect, this is absolute S tier for this build. 100% would recommend gambling for it. It's pretty cheap to gamble thanks to the fact that the base is so cheap. So I would heavily suggest this. And of course, for a catalyst, we have cast speed, res, health, and mana. Probably more mana, probably, and more critical multi on that. That's pretty much it for the gearing. There's nothing else crazy I would do with this. It's a pretty simple build to put together. It's just a lot of investment, mainly in terms of idols and gear, so you can get to that 300 mana threshold. Like I said, you can use an Orion's Eye to kind of cheat that instead of utilizing this amulet. The only reason I'm using an amulet like this is because I like having dodge, so that's why I'm using an amulet like this. But you can get dodge flat everywhere else, because I barely have any dodge flat other than my rings. So if you just get some dodge flat, that won't be much of an issue. That being said, thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your evening wherever you're at, and bye!